We're going to open it up for some questions. I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera back on here so you guys can see me again. Hi, everyone out there. Hopefully you enjoyed this session, and let's go ahead and answer any questions that you might have. Okay, I see there's some questions in the chat, so I'm going to start off with the chat. Okay, I'll start off with a question related to Zoom, and it says, I'm hearing that Zoom has been crashing and there's a wait list to obtain access, and that could be absolutely true. I actually don't know. I do know that they're super busy right now, and so it's quite likely that their system is overwhelmed. But hopefully you guys are able to get access. If you can't use Zoom, again, there's GoToMeeting, Join Me, freeconferencecall.com. There's a lot of different software providers. I've used Glance, so there should be some options there. Okay, it says, what is the name of the software, although I'm not sure. So David, if you know which software you were asking about, I can spell it out. Okay, it says, isn't the camera and microphone used on your computer two different pieces? And the answer is yes. I actually bought a separate microphone and a separate camera to do this, okay? And you'll see if you're interested in the links, I'll send you links to this. I use a Logitech camera because that's one of the ones that's the most reliable, 1080p quality. The microphone, on the other hand, is from a different company that specializes in microphones. There is a microphone, believe it or not, on the camera built in. And so in theory, I don't need an external microphone, but I prefer to have a separate one because it's higher quality. So you can decide. There are a lot of two-in-one microphone camera setups, so that's a good comment there. So it says, we've been told we can't use Zoom to conference with clients when discussing security products. And I think it means securities, like securities licensed products. Do you know which applications can be used? So I guess I would find out what the reasoning for that is. It may have to do with the recording function. When you're recording people, you have to tell them that they're being recorded, especially if their voice is on the line, especially if you're in California, they have laws about that. So it's probably specific to the reasoning why you can use the software. I don't think it's necessarily the software itself, but it's probably what you can do with the software. For example, people put in their voicemail when they're in the securities business that I can't accept trades on this line because you don't want people to leave them voicemails for a stock trade and then have it not get executed. So I suspect it has something to do with that. Another question here is, it says, did you say that Zoom includes Zoom Webinar? Okay, good question. There's a little confusion because they're actually two different services by the same company. Zoom Meetings, which is probably the one getting overwhelmed with requests right now, is the software that does a one-on-one meeting with the screen share and the video. Zoom Webinar allows you to host these large events. And the Zoom Webinar is not free, although their lowest entry-level price point isn't too bad. I think it's $40 a month to do the Zoom Webinar like this. And if you want to have more guests, they have upgrades to higher level tiers. It's two different software programs, though, to do the meetings and the webinar. So really good question, even though it's the same companies. Next question is, your microphone from Amazon, what brand is it? It's called a Fine. Fine. I don't think it's a name brand, but it works really well. And again, you can buy ones. There's kind of more well-known name brand microphones out there. They're just, of course, more expensive. This one worked for my purpose. And again, if you need a link to it, I'll send you a link afterwards. Just email me. Okay. Do you worry much about the sound and your mouth not being synced up? Good question. I don't know if that's happening on this webinar. There are reasons why that happens. It could be because the internet speed is a little slow, or you're using Wi-Fi. I actually hardwire into my computer now because I do so many of these videos that I want to make sure that the speed is good on there. Another reason why the syncing doesn't happen is if you use your phone, your office phone, instead of your computer microphone, then there is a lag. And you will see a lack of syncing. When we do videos, I always start off by asking to use the computer microphone to avoid that lag, but sometimes you can't avoid it, and there is a slight lag. And it can be a little distracting. So I do think that can be an issue, especially if it's significant, but it has to do mostly with your internet speed. So check that out. Okay, someone's telling me my voice and my image are not quite synced. And again, that has to do with the internet speed. I think it's possibly because we have a lot of people on this webinar today. We did get a lot of people attending, and it just could be kind of slowing down the system, or it could be like someone pointed out that Zoom is overloaded right now with so many people doing webinars, and I'm sure they're upgrading their infrastructure right now to deal with all that. So it says, Mark, I was playing with different backgrounds and for some reason it wasn't clear. Would you use a green screen to provide a better image, or should I get better pictures for the wall behind me? The wall behind my chair is boring. Okay, good question. I like the detail there too. So Zoom is unique in that it allows you to put in these artificial backdrops. Like if I wanted to right now, I'm not going to do it. I could show the Golden Gate Bridge behind me or things like that. And sometimes they kind of don't show up perfectly unless you have like a green backdrop, kind of like a green screen in a video studio or a television studio. But I don't prefer that. There's actually a fake book background. This one's real, by the way. But I don't like to use fake screens because for me it's about being real and building trust with people. But I would do a background if you have like a white wall behind you that's boring. I would put a picture, like put your diploma up on the wall. So people can see it. Anything interesting and engaging, that's good. It's not too distracting. I think it adds to the ambiance. So that's what I would recommend there. Okay, I'm going to go to the question. Those are the ones in the chat box. And then I know we have a lot of questions here too. So we're going to go through those. Thanks for sticking around here. Do you use Zoom with the webinar recordings? Yes, so early on I was using GoToMeeting, and it has a really nice way to record webinars as well. And now I use Zoom, and Zoom automatically records the webinars on Zoom Webinar. When I do video meetings that I record, for those of you that are connecting with me on LinkedIn, you probably see me doing these interviews. I also use Zoom Meeting for that. And then I use some other software to kind of produce it and add some music and an intro and a few other things. But just kind of minor touch-ups. I don't do a lot of editing on the videos. But I use this same exact software pretty much we're using today to do all of my videos as well. So what initial software do you recommend to get started? Almost because I'm not a tech geek, quote unquote. And I think that was probably before we went through it. But of course, we talked a lot about that today and that would be probably my recommendation is using Zoom, unless they're overloaded. And then you may need to look at a few backup alternatives for right now, but you can always use them later. Let's see. What do we need to communicate to clients in terms of their equipment and software? So when they're actually trying to attend your meetings, do they have to have a special setup to do it? And the answer is not really. Okay, worst case scenario is, let's say that they're unable to log in for some reason. Either they don't know how, or their computer, for whatever reason, does not have the right setup or speed. They can always just call in, and they always give you this call-in number. And so you can still have your conference call using the same line, even though they can't see you. One tip that I didn't mention that just kind of popped into my head is, usually when people book a meeting with me, I always ask them for their phone number as well. It allows me to ask them some questions, and I'll also ask, what they're interested in learning about on the call, because that will give me some insight as to why they're booking the meeting. And I almost about half the time will call the person that set up the meeting with me and not wait for them to log into Zoom. And the reason for that is, I think when people type in their phone number, first of all, they might expect me to call them. But second of all, they may have struggles using the software. So usually I'll call them first. And then when I'm on the phone with them, if we need to do a screen share, or if they want to go on and see me on the webcam, I'll ask them to log in. And they'll sometimes say, I'm just logging into your Zoom, after I call them, and then we'll jump off the phone and we'll be on the Zoom. You can't use both at the same time. So if I call them and they're on the Zoom, you'll get this really annoying echo going back and forth. So you do have to hang up on the call when you're doing the Zoom part of it. Okay, something popped up my screen here. Move that out of the way. Okay, next question we have is, I'm using a Plantronics headset, not a microphone. Is there a reason to consider a microphone? So having a headset or having, I forget what it's called, like a lavalier microphone, the one that kind of clips on that you might use at a conference, that works just as well. I have found, and I've done a little research, that using an external microphone is a little bit better quality than a headset or that lavalier microphone. It doesn't pick up as much movement either, like static, because it's sitting on my desk right now. And the type of microphone they use is like a unidirection microphone, meaning that I'm actually talking into the microphone and it doesn't pick up sound from the behind or from other directions. So my kids are screaming in the other room. Generally speaking, my audience doesn't hear it. I hear it, but they don't hear it. So as long as you can ignore that, this type of microphone I think works best because of the fact that it only picks up one direction of sound. Great questions, though. I mean, keep them coming here. I'll hopefully get through all the questions here, but we do have some time. So, video versus screen share only. What are your thoughts? So screen share only. When the agents and advisors that I work with, I think I've become pretty well versed at using screen shares, particularly when you're working with clients in other locations and in different states. And in our business for long-term care, specialists, are available kind of around the country as long as you get licensed in other states. And the screen share is most critical because a lot of times you're showing a presentation or you're showing different insurance plan designs. It's much more effective than talking through them. I think it's almost impossible to talk through an insurance illustration on the phone, and really convey the information well. So screen share, I would say, is most important. Most people don't use video, again, for the reasons I've talked about, that, it's just one extra step. It's kind of uncomfortable when you're first doing it. Like right now, I'm staring into a camera lens, but I know I'm talking to you and I have, practice doing this. But I think it's really important for the audience to see you. You kind of have to, most of the time, you're not going to see them. And that's what makes it so different from being face-to-face most of all, is you can't read body language, right? I can't see you guys raising your hand in the background. I have to look at your questions here. But you kind of just have to pretend that you're talking to them. And I would definitely use video. But if you have the option of either video or screen share, I would probably choose a screen share because you need to convey the information. But you can actually use both at the same time. One says spell Allenby. I'm sure it's something that I spoke really fast on, and I don't think I said Allenby. But so Jim, if you have a clarification of your question, feel free to type it in. How do you spell Calendly? Calendly, like calendar with an ly. Everyone wants to pronounce it Calendy. Everyone says that to me, but it's Calendly with an ly at the end. Okay. Where I live, they are going to start using Zoom for the schools to have virtual classrooms teaching the material. Yeah, we're starting to see some interesting things. One thing that was really nice that I saw Zoom came out with is if you're a K through 12 school, they actually provide Zoom for free for all the schools out there that have now gone virtual, so they can teach students remotely. And because the kids tend to be quicker with the technology, I think that's going to work extremely well. Hopefully the teachers can keep up with that. But I've heard that as well. And I do think you're going to see much more of this becoming predominant really quickly as everyone starts to adopt, like after a couple of weeks of not being in school, you're going to want to get back in school real quick. There's a question on how to promote the webinars. We covered that a little bit in the session, so I won't rehash that. But again, the way that I do it is through email marketing. Most of the people that are on this call, I know personally from, again, my years working for the insurance company. A lot of you came in, though, probably because like Prezi, for example, put this webinar on their social media account. And so you may be coming through Prezi or through Facebook or LinkedIn or something like that. But those are the ways that I generally promote the webinars. Is emails number one, though, by far. Who does the webinar reminders and follow-ups? That actually is done directly by the system. They have the reminders and follow-ups automatically, but I use another software program that actually does email outreach after the webinars to each individual attendee. And I'll probably use it for you guys. So when you get an email directly from me, yes, I did send it, but I also may have sent it to a lot of other people. Wink, wink. But yes, that's the way that I do it. It's important to personalize that and to make it so that you do follow up and try to find out what's going on with people who are interested enough to attend your webinar, like you guys are here. Can you share the microphone you use? I think we mentioned that. It's the FINE microphone, and I'll send you guys a link to it if you want to after the call. Presentation's a little fuzzy. Okay, I'm going to look at the recording afterwards because this is my first time using this software, and that's another good tip is after you do a session and you record the session, make sure you watch your own session. Nobody likes the sound of their own voice. I'm no exception, but watch the session just so you can see how it went and things you can do to improve. That's a great way to learn. What about Skype? Skype's another great screen share software. If you're meeting with family in particular, FaceTime and Skype, those tend to be a little bit more set up for like a family meeting, for example, or one-on-one with your family. If your parents, for example, you may not want them to go out right now because of the virus. So I would encourage you to try to do the FaceTime with them. You don't have to use Zoom. This is more for business settings. It tends to be a better software, although you could use either one kind of interchangeably. Please send me the links for the equipment. I will. Thanks, Gail. Microphone, we talked about that. It says, why does my screen and sound keep freezing? I'm not sure. I haven't gotten that feedback a lot, so it may be specific to the computer and how fast I'm talking. I talk very fast. But it may be just the connection you might have in your computer through your internet. Do all the software choices allow you to record and save? So yeah, there's a lot of differences between the different software programs. The one I mentioned today, Zoom, GoToMeeting, JoinMe, they all allow you to record and save. Some allow you to set it up automatically when you're setting up the meeting. At the beginning, when you're using those software programs, go through all the settings. It's a great exercise to do, both to see what your options are. I would probably use the default settings most of the time. They're pretty smart about setting it up the right way from the get-go, but also to see what they're capable of doing. I learned quite a bit just going through the settings a lot of the time. Oh, I didn't know I could do that. The other thing is they oftentimes have very good help. They're video software companies. They produce their own videos about how to use their own software. So rather than having me do a demo, I would say go to zoom.com, go to their search their help desk, and there'll be videos, like really short videos on how to do everything. And you can look up anything on their websites. Okay, let's see. Working from home occasionally. I need to mute during meetings, i.e. the dog might bark. I can easily do this on my cell phone during a meeting. Can you do the same if you're using an external microphone? Very good question. The answer is yes. There is a little microphone on my screen where I can hit the button and it will mute. And in fact, when I go into meetings, a lot of times I'll start off on mute. I'll oftentimes log in a little early because I don't want to forget, to get into the meeting on time. And I'll just keep the meeting open while I'm on mute. And then I'll do my work, or I'll follow up on emails or whatever I'm doing. And then when I start to hear activity on the other end, I know my partner, my client, whoever's on the other end has arrived. So I oftentimes use that mute, and then I'll unmute and I'll say, hi, thanks for joining me on the call and all that. Are you familiar with JoinMe? Yes, so I use JoinMe as well. JoinMe and GoToMeeting, incidentally, are owned by the same company, but they're very different softwares. JoinMe works very well. There's a lot of long-term care agents specifically that use JoinMe and swear by it. It doesn't require a software download, which is a nice thing about it. I've found it a little bit more difficult to use on the hosting end, but I think the audience end is pretty smooth. That's just my anecdotal feedback on JoinMe. For one-to-one meetings, why not use FaceTime or Skype? And I agree with that. They're great, especially with family. The reason you might not want to use them, and again, I don't know if they have these functions because I've never used them in a business setting. I don't think they allow you to do a screen share. And so that's a big drawback if, I'm doing a lot of screen shares. So that's probably the number one reason. So other people tell me it's pretty synced up. Thank you for the feedback and the sound. As for backgrounds, what can we do in terms of your backgrounds to gain rapport? And this is kind of a good tip from somebody in the audience. Thanks, Todd. Which is, you want to put up things that might have an affinity for your audience. You'll see in the corner there, I have a book about Susie Orman because we have a partnership where we're working with some of her clients. Putting up diplomas. I went to Yale University, and so it's nice to kind of put that up there. That sometimes has an affinity for people to see that. You'll notice the little Graco thing up there. It's actually reversed because there's a mirror on this particular webinar. But a lot of young parents like myself, they know what the Graco means. It means you have little kids. It's a pack and play. So just those little things can build rapport. So your favorite sports, it was mentioned in here, things like that. There's a lot of different things you can go into. Okay, we're getting near the end here. Let's see if there's any other questions that haven't been asked yet. The advantages of Zoom versus GoToMeeting has been asked a few times here. There's a company online that's called G2. If you Google search G2, they do reviews of all kinds of different technologies. And I actually go through G2 when I'm looking at a new technology. I use about somewhere between 15 and 20 different technologies in my business of all kinds. Before I actually purchased any of the software, I went to the G2 reviews, just like you would on Amazon or Yelp, and I looked at what people were saying were the pros and the cons, and it gives you a pretty good idea. So that's what I would recommend. If you're looking at any new software program, do that. The other thing that I would recommend, just from my personal experience on the business side, is they oftentimes will give you a discount significant to do an annual subscription account, I tend to still go month to month. I'm willing to pay the extra, especially when I'm starting off. If I haven't had a good chance to use it, I don't really want to lock into a long contract, personal preference. But I've had, to switch software around just based on what's been working or not working for me. And the software companies themselves, they change, their software fairly often, or like Zoom right now is having this elevated volume, for example, potentially. So I would say, it's a little bit safer to do it month to month. That would be my suggestion. Okay. So it says, I use GoToMeeting for webinars and share the links with invitees. I'd like to be able to have people register from my email marketing and send reminders like your webinar had. How did you do that? So if you're using GoToMeeting, I'm trying to think if it has options for reminders. It may not. The Calendly software and the email calendar allow you to set reminders. So that's where I would put the reminder if you're doing a meeting type of environment. The webinar is a little bit different in that it's kind of built into the webinar software. So that's not GoToMeeting, it's GoToWebinar. And that will be a little bit more robust on how they do reminders and follow-ups. So it just may be a different in which software you're using. Can you see people signed into the meeting through their camera on their laptop? It's funny you asked that question, because a lot of times when I'm getting on video and for the very first time, and people are kind of surprised sometimes they'll see me on video when they log in, they'll ask, can you see me? That's like half the time, like clients will ask you that. And of course you can't see them because they have to turn on their video. Usually we set it off by default. If they have a camera and it's set on by default, it may actually turn on their camera, and you do have to be careful. I wouldn't set that to turn on because it makes people uncomfortable. But usually, no, you can't see them. I can't see anyone in the audience. I can just see how many people are on. I can see your names. I can see the questions you've typed in. But right now I'm talking kind of in a monologue, which is probably why I'm talking fast. Next question we have is, I'm going to scroll down here a little bit. I have an MP4 video. Can I show it to my prospects with Zoom? Good question. I have not tried to show a video on Zoom before. I believe you can do it. I think if you play it on your desktop and then you share your screen, you can show a video that way. That should work. I could also, some of the software allows you to kind of embed video, like Prezi here. I could have embedded a video to play for you guys. So yes, you can do things like that too. Zoom, I see that Zoom has an app on an Android phone. Yes, a lot of these companies, including Zoom, allow people to log in through an app on their smartphone, which is very convenient. I've actually used it, not for the video, obviously, but in the car. I have like a holder for my phone in the car, and if I have to, take a meeting when I'm traveling, I'll go on and it will log in automatically with Zoom. It's pretty convenient, their app, if you need to use it. But 95% of the time, I'm at my computer using it. Can the video be minimized on the client screen so that they can see you throughout the presentation? So the answer is I intentionally went off of video for most of this presentation. You're probably getting enough of me right now. But I wanted you guys to be able to see the slides and focus on the slides instead of looking at me and my background here. But you can minimize it or maximize it. When you share your screen, it's going to kind of like split screen and show both. But you can turn off one or the other or both. So that's really flexible. Okay, the next one is I work for a small agency that doesn't specialize in long-term care insurance. How can I partner with your specialist? I'll reach out to you and contact you after the call. Thanks for that little plug there. Okay, I see a plethora of YouTube videos regarding Zoom usage. Yeah, so that's the way that I learned how to do my recordings that I mentioned before, is I went on YouTube, and it's great that the YouTubers themselves do how-to videos, how I do my videos. So I actually watched a few of those. I looked at how they set up their equipment, and then I actually did some similar things, but I tweaked it to kind of fit my needs. So that's probably what you're going to do after this webinar as well, is you're going to find what works for you. You don't have to copy my setup or follow all these instructions, obviously. Do what works best and what's most comfortable for you. Does the client have to download any software? So I'm not sure. I think with Zoom, they have to download something. It kind of happens seamlessly in the background. Some people already have it on their computer, and maybe it just loads. So I've heard that feedback before, but I haven't ever seen it be a problem. Very rarely is Zoom blocked by firewalls in office environments. I don't know if that's because of how they do their software or that's because so many people use it that the offices allow it already. But just be aware if something's not working or something's blocked, it could be because of a firewall, but it doesn't happen that often. Someone asked me if I've heard of McCodeGo screen share, and my answer is no. There's like about, I don't know, more than 100 companies out there that do screen shares and these meetings. So there's a lot of options out there. Although Zoom is probably the #1 company. They're a publicly traded company now. Their stock is going up incidentally while everyone else is going down for obvious reasons that a lot of people are using their stuff right now. Other than click on the link, what does the participant need to do? And the answer is they click on the link and then they have to say like open, and that's it. And then they're in. And then they may have to make sure their microphone is turned on. And if they want to use video, that their video is turned on. So you may have some audio issues where you can only see their mouth moving like this. And that their microphone is turned off. You can chat with them to try to tell them. But usually what I'll do is, because I have their phone number too in my meeting invite, I'll give them a phone call and see what's going on. I don't want to talk about my business. A few people have asked me about Buddy INS. And yeah, I partner with agents. They stay in their contracts, and we do marketing on a split commission basis. So it's really kind of a partnership where I'm educating clients, but they're my clients as well as their clients. So if you want to learn more about that, just email the follow-up after the webinar, and I'll reach out and we can talk some more. It asks, can you do a whiteboard on Zoom? I actually have never tried that myself, so I'm going to have to answer this one. I don't know. I know I haven't said that very much here, but I haven't tried all the functionalities out, and that one's can be used. But there's also other software that you can use in combination with Zoom to do things like whiteboarding or drawing, so clients can see on the screen. All right, we're approaching the last few minutes here. I think we're down to the last few questions. Let's see. Do you ever get feedback conflict with your speakers when your mic is being used? Okay, and that's kind of what I had mentioned earlier, is if you have them logged into their computer and then they also call in, for example, you will get a very annoying reverberation. It's an echo because it's picking up both sounds. Sometimes you'll get an echo when their a microphone isn't set up properly or isn't right. So like, let's say that their microphone is built into their computer and they're using their computer speakers. Very, very often, their speakers will pick up their voice and you will hear this annoying echo. So if you use an external mic, as you've noticed today, you won't hear that echo because it's only picking up from one direction. So even though I'm using my computer speakers, the external mic is not picking that sound up from the back. When you use a different type of mic, that's something very important, and that's a good point, that can be a kind of annoying, and you may have to go to the phone option in those situations. So usually just go to the telephone. But a good tip there, that happens quite often if you don't have the right microphone, or if the client doesn't and they're using their computer. I have a desktop and a laptop. Can I practice between both computers? Absolutely. In fact, you can download the software on both computers. Most people that I've experienced have a laptop, and most people have a laptop with a camera built in. Almost everybody I've talked to and done videos with have a camera on them at all times, whether they know it or not, either on their laptop or on their smartphone. It's kind of funny how like almost everyone can do a video anytime now. Okay, I think we've got into the end of the list, and we're right at the top of the hour. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around. I appreciate you attending. It's great to reconnect with those of you I haven't talked to in a few months as I've been launching the Buddy INS program. And I'm going to try to host another session like this on this topic to help other people out there, maybe your clients or business owners. I'm going to start reaching out to clients of partners that have worked with us and directly invite them to a webinar on how to do this. If you have feedback on ways that I can do the presentation better, also let me know for that webinar. We'll probably do that in a couple of weeks just to give me some time to market that. But anything I can do to help people during this time, I'd love to do. And again, thanks so much for coming today. Talk to everyone soon.